talking a big game without backing it up. I think the next president needs to be a lot quieter, but send a signal that we're prepared to act in the national security interests of this country, to get back in the business of creating a more peaceful world. Please clap.
One does not simply wipe their ass with over $100,000. Well, let's just take a time machine back to the archaic era of 2015. As strange as it is today, less than a decade ago, it seems to be the case that the next commander-in-chief and the leader of the free world would likely be Jeb Bush, hailing from the Bush clan, which produced his father, former President George H.W. Bush, or Bush Sr., as well as his brother, former President George W. Bush Jr. With the 2024 election in full swing, it is easy to forget that this was an era less than a decade ago in which electoral politics and the media didn't revolve around Trump. American politics was actually kind of a boring place at the time. Fairly normal, nothing particularly spectacular or out of the ordinary. It was so boring that, well, a boring guy was predicted to be likely the next president. Jeb Bush was the governor of Florida. However, in many ways he is the opposite of a Florida man. He is clearly above trying to procreate with the exhaust pipe of his truck. In fact, Jeb is kind of like the anti-Florida man, as he is about as fascinating as a single stale saltine cracker. However, his attempt to become the GOP nominee for the 2016 election and face off with the presumed nominee of Hillary Clinton is absolutely fascinating. This is a tale of a political dynasty crumbling into the dust, a story of over $100 million of lobbyist and political donor money set on fire, and then getting the ashes doused in gasoline lit on fire again. And the narrative of one of the most powerful statesmen being humiliated by a reality TV host who tried to sell steaks at an electronics store. With Obama's presidency soon coming to a close, most of the political pundits, as stated before, were expecting an election between Jeb Bush and Hillary Clinton. Obviously, Jeb Bush, as I stated before, was from a political dynasty, and obviously Hillary Clinton needs no explanation, being the wife of Bill Clinton. And the donors were throwing paper bills at these candidates that would make a stripper jealous. Given the fact that his brother George Bush was heavily unpopular towards the end of his presidency, along with fears of nepotism accusations, Jeb Bush's campaign discarded the use of his last name for marketing. Instead of Bush 2016, they called it Jeb, and you know that they're hardcore when they have to use an exclamation mark. Jeb Bush said he used the exclamation mark to, quote, connote excitement. His choice to use the exclamation mark sparked Jeb mania, with crowds that would make the band Queen jealous. Mothers named their newborn sons Jeb. Campaign tickets even sold like funnel cakes at a fat acceptance conference. This was the age of the Alpha Chad Jeb. Alas, this campaign would not end with an exclamation mark to the White House, but rather a period for his entire political career. To counter subpar polling, Jeb's campaign implemented the marketing slogan, Jeb can fix it, which really didn't fix the country or even his campaign, but it did lead to a large number of memes with Jeb's face photoshopped onto Bob the Builder. The roster of candidates for the GOP convention was deep. You had the intellectual Rick Perry, neurosurgeon and archaeologist Ben Carson, this guy who looks like a melted wax candle in a BDSM dungeon, and an obscure person you may or may not have heard of by the name of Donald J. Trump. At the time, Trump's campaign was just seen as a publicity stunt that would last a few months before delegates would inevitably coalesce around Lord Premier Jeb. The money was flowing in the tens of millions, but then the debate started. Trump is not the most intellectual politician.
I love the poorly educated. I love the poorly educated. I love the poorly educated.
Nor the most articulate.
Written by a nice reporter. Now the poor guy, you got to see this guy. Oh, I don't know what I said. I don't remember.
But he was and still is a very effective orator when it comes to using simplistic, mono, or bisyllabic words to insult his opponents. He infamously called Jeb low energy, which is an understatement for a guy who looks like he needs to be put into a tortoise terrarium. It didn't help that Jeb was the brother of George W. Bush, who at this point was widely hated by even a substantial portion of the GOP voting bloc. Trump tore the Reagan-Bush era to shreds, advocating for tariffs instead of free trade, promoting an open hostility towards immigrants, or at the very least illegal immigrants, and advocated for a non-interventionist foreign policy that was sympathetic to Russia. It would be the immigration issue that would be the biggest deal, as Jeb was seen as being more sympathetic to undocumented migrants or illegal immigrants, depending on how you like to refer to them. Much of the GOP base was centered around big business, which benefited from immigration, both legal and illegal, as they provide a cheap workforce. Jeb's polling among the GOP sank to lower than 5%.
Tough. You're never going to be president of the United States
tough,
by insulting your way to the presidency.
Let's see, I'm at 4. Ha, 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 ha.
Jeb was getting desperate. He needed to show his inner Chad Alpha Omega Sigma grindset male to fight back against Trump. Did he give energizing speeches? No. Did he demolish Trump in the next debate? No. Did he give bench press photo ops? No. Instead, he proclaimed,
I'm a grinder. I'm very competitive, and so I feel good about where we are.
You keep saying I'm a grinder. What does that mean?
That means I described it as I eat nails before I have breakfast.
Needless to say, tough guy Jeb had not come into fruition. So he tried again, this time with a tweet. America, written on a handgun. It looks like a meme created by someone who hates America and wants it to look as stereotypically dumb as possible. Needless to say, this didn't convince GOP voters that a guy who wears a turtleneck sweater is pulsating with divine masculinity. During the Iowa caucus, he got not first, not second, not third, not fourth, but fifth. No, just kidding, he didn't get fifth place either. He got sixth place, with a whopping 2.8% of the vote. Next on the list of the GOP primary was New Hampshire. This was a typical primary voting system rather than a caucus like Iowa. He was going to pull it off this time. And he gave the most alpha Chad speech that has ever been given in history. You can feel the testosterone radiating throughout the room.
Talking a big game without backing it up. I think the next president needs to be a lot quieter, but send a signal that we're prepared to act in the national security interests of this country to get back in the business of creating a more peaceful world. Please clap.
Needless to say, no groupies were slinging their panties on stage, and he won fourth place. Next on the list was South Carolina, where he got a whopping 8% of the vote. And that ended his campaign, flushing $130 million down the toilet.